next piece we wanted to bring you here is there's an interesting rift that has been revealed or exacerbated or underscored by what's going on with Israel and Gaza right now within the Democratic Party. And yesterday we talked to you about the numbers in terms of Gallup and how much there has been a shift within the Democratic base that is reflected by a few Democratic members of Congress in terms of who their sympathies were taking this particular situation out of it, with whom their sympathies lie more in the conflict between Israel and Palestine. You now have a majority of Democrats who say their sympathies are more with the Palestinians than they are with Israel. That is a dramatic shift over the past decade or so. It's a new development. I think it's led largely by young people who have a very different view of this conflict than their parents do, even, Democratic parents. As I said, it's reflected in a few of the younger squad members who have been elected, Cori Bush, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, and others at various moments, depending on how they're feeling. And so you have also had this schism really open up over on the Democratic Party's party organ media, which is MSNBC. So you had the head of the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, go on Morning Joe and really blast the network's coverage of this current Israel-Gaza conflict in quite unsparing terms. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
So while I am sad and trying to cope, I'll be honest, I am angry. I am angry with the world that allowed the dehumanization of Israelis and sanitized the terrorism of Hamas. I must say, I love this show and I love this network, but I've got to ask, who is writing the scripts? Hamas, the people who did this, they are not fighters, Jonathan. They are not militants, and I'm looking right at the camera. They are terrorists. It is a barbarian who rapes and brutalizes women, who kills children in front of their parents, and then brings them over to Gaza, who literally, we've heard all these reports, and we know these aren't just reports. These were filmed gleefully by the barbarians who committed these grotesque crimes. So I just think, guys, get the story right. And all these pictures of missiles or the rubble in Gaza, please talk to the Israeli mothers and fathers who lost their children. Talk to the grandchildren whose grandparents were seized as hostages. And please stop calling this a retaliation.
So there's a lot I could say about that. I'm going to hold off for a moment because based on his commentary, you would think that MSNBC was like, go Hamas.
Yes.
Right? Yay for the murdered Israelis. That there was no images of the Israeli bloodshed, no compassion for the Israeli citizens. And what he's really alluding to here, even though he doesn't come out and name names, is three anchors in particular. Ayman Mohyeldin, Mehdi Hassan, and Ali Velshi, all of which have international backgrounds, many of whom have covered this conflict on the ground for a long time or have roots directly in the region. So I want to play for you a little bit of the commentary that he's reacting to show you, I think, the distance between how he's portraying it as being like Hamas talking points versus how they were actually speaking about the conflict. Let's take a listen to a little of that.
When we talk about Gaza in the West, for a lot of people, it's very easy to conflate Hamas, which is a militant group that carries out acts of vicious terror, as they did this weekend, with Gaza, which is a place that contains 2.2 million people, Alex, half of them children. Half of the 2.2 million people are children, and it's one of the most densely populated places on planet Earth. You've got 2.2 million people crowded into 141 square miles. So they automatically become the victims of Israeli airstrikes because it's so crowded, because it's so densely populated. And it's basically like living, Alex, in an open-air prison.
Recognition of anything that has been going on, let alone, the only thing Americans are worried about these days are these so-called judicial reforms going on in Israel, which have led to hundreds of thousands of people people protesting on the streets, but lots of Palestinians have said to me, boy, they wish that those same Israelis who were out there protesting the so-called judicial reforms would be protesting Israel's inhumane treatment of the Palestinians who live under Israeli occupation. But
what is the objective of Israel invading the Gaza Strip, right? Because I emphasize this point for those of us who have been following this conflict for years. Israel has already assassinated and killed the most senior Hamas militant officials. They have killed the spiritual leader of Hamas. They have arrested dozens of Hamas.
They can achieve that.
They can achieve that. They have achieved that. They've done that.
Yeah.
They've done that. And my point is, what you're going to see certainly within Israel's security apparatus is a debate. Whether that is public or transparent is not going to be as clear-cut. But Israeli military officials that I've spoken to over the years have debated whether or not the siege, the blockade, was achieving Israel's strategic objective of trying to bring calm and quiet to the southern borders.
Every one of those individuals have acknowledged, and Mehdi, I've listened to a lot of his commentary. He's very clear that what Hamas did is an atrocity, it's a war crime. He's just also trying to acknowledge the war crimes that Israel's committing and the broader context, as we've tried to do very carefully here as well. And so when I hear the ADL dude talking about how, where did this dehumanization of Israelis come from? It doesn't seem to me that Israelis are being dehumanized. It seems to me what he's upset about is Palestinians being humanized. And so when he said, quote, get the story right, and he was very upset about images of rubble in Gaza. Well, how are you going to tell the accurate story if you're not showing the images of the rubble in Gaza, as you were, of course, also highlighting and acknowledging and empathizing with the pain, suffering, death, and carnage that was inflicted on the Israeli citizens?
It's funny, Krystal, I get a lot of messages. People are like, when are you going to speak up for Israel? And I'm like, I didn't know that I had to. I'm a citizen of the United States. I feel very bad and horrible. I've been to Israel, spent a lot of time there. I have friends in the IDF. I have nothing but sympathy for so many of the people who were killed there. But as I said on yesterday's show, I also have a lot of good friends who are Palestinian. And so I actually consider it a blessing that I know people who are actually on both sides. Some of these people hate each other. They've never even met before. But my life has taken me around the world. And I've just learned through a lot of these conflicts, black and white thinking will get you nowhere. Saying, oh, you have to just unequivocally, back one side. I don't operate that way. Not with Russia and Ukraine. Not even when it's unpopular. You don't operate that way either.
Yeah.
That's just not what we do here. And
Well,
unfortunately, a lot of our media, that's how they want to portray
That's
everything.
right.
And listen,
That's right.
you're being used if you want that, because I'm watching all of this march towards, the U.S. has got to back up. The U.S. Carrier Strike Group has got to get involved in Gaza. That is a nightmare. Now we're going to get into a war with Iran. There are millions of people who live in Iran. I lost people in the war in Iraq. Known people who died in so many of these conflicts. This is the last thing that we need. And the scars of Iraq on media, that's why I'm in this job today. I don't subscribe to black and white narratives, and neither do you, because I think both of us are sitting here very much for that reason of watching people get killed, slaughtered, lose limbs, and all that, ultimately really for nothing.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult, to sit and to watch like the same beat and the war drum happen when we don't have to be that way. So we will never cover conflict that way. And that's effectively what Jonathan Greenblatt is
100%. I mean, to me, the most revealing thing that he said is get the story right.
Yeah, it's like, what?
And I think it really, and he's mad about, how dare you show the suffering in Gaza? How dare you talk about anything else that's going on except for the things I want you to talk about? Because he wants this to be as Disney-fied a narrative as the Russia-Ukraine narrative is.
Yeah,
and that's what cable news does.
Yeah.
I mean, even putting aside
what they're
the
good at.
extreme and understandable emotion around blood, death, war, carnage, etc. I mean, this is what they do with Democrats and Republicans. This is the good guys. This is the bad guys. Let me give you the Disney version of American politics. That's all they know how to do. That's all their formats are set up to do. And so the fact that you have a few voices who happen on this particular issue to have personal experience, have reported on it for a long time. If you listen to what Eamon said, it was very thoughtful. He clearly has deep knowledge about the history in the region, compassion on both sides of the issue, no doubt about it. And it's a war on any kind of nuance. No, you are not allowed. You can only choose one side to reflect their humanity. That's it. And so I do think, even as the media is still overwhelmingly one-sided on this issue, the fact that you have any sort of nuance in the New York Times, any sort of nuance, CNN had a few interviews that were, with actual Palestinian voices, that you have a few anchors on MSNBC who are able to articulate a different view, they see this as a real threat to the lockhold that they've had, bipartisan lock that they've had on American politics for years and years and years and years and years.
Yeah, and I just it's like thinking about how he's like get the story right and all of that. That is pure propaganda. All of us have, and what's crazy to me is some of the people who are buying into this are the exact ones who are screaming about, oh, we're being propagandized about Ukraine. It's like, what,
True.
You think it's only about Ukraine? It's about everything, people. That's why you got to actually wake up and be asked like what you're being used and propagandized towards.
They want the Disney version on this one.
Yeah, Iraq was not Disney, and we all found that out the hard way. Ukraine's not Disney either. We're finding that out the hard way right now. Afghanistan wasn't Disney. It wasn't just all about liberating girls' schools. It wasn't so simple, and it wasn't so easy. It's like, I don't know, it's Syria, same one. It's like, yeah, we watched the horror of Aleppo, and then we found out that the guys fighting on the other side are freaking Al-Qaeda. It's like, what do you do? That's what an actual conflict is. And until you understand that, then you're really not going to get anywhere. But, in some ways, it's actually helpful because it just means that only places like us who can't get muzzled for saying what we actually think are going to be able to prosper and survive in this. However, I do think it's unfortunate, that people take margin. And he's such a partisan cretin too, because this is all based on his ideology of censorship, of what he was doing with Twitter, about leveraging and making sure that any criticism of Israel in the past is conflated directly with anti-Semitism, using his organization effectively as an enforcer for the liberal elite in the country, and that's why they do it. They do it for this reason, because it works. Because you know this, the sting of that criticism being felt high up, within MSNBC, it's going to have an impact. You'd be lying. These people, Mehdi and Eamon and all these people, they would be lying if they said that wouldn't have an impact on the way. They have to think about that when they go on the air.
It's human. Even if, I would not be surprised.
I'm not saying they will do anything
I have
wrong.
no inside knowledge to what sort of discussions have happened at MSNBC. Let me make that clear. Would I be surprised if there was a direct talking to? No. But does there even have to be a direct talking to?
No.
Absolutely not. You think they didn't see that segment? Of course they saw that segment. And they know that there is a lot of pressure to conform. They know the things they're supposed to say. They know the things that they're supposed to highlight. And it's very difficult if you're in an organization over time not to at least capitulate to that in some respect. So respect to them for, daring to say that Gazans also are human beings, and that, this conflict didn't just start 4 days ago, that there's a broader context that doesn't justify murder of Israeli citizens. Literally no one on MSNBC is saying that at all. I have not seen that whatsoever. They're not justifying Israeli death. But if you want to actually help viewers understand what's happening here, you have to give the history. You have to help people understand where Hamas came from and how they gained power and why they're in this position to start with. And the way that Netanyahu, as we talked to today, found them to be a useful foil and bolstered them, and how the U.S. was also complicit in helping to bring them to power, and all of that. And understanding that, the lives of people within Gaza. If you're going to tell a complete story, you got to tell a complete story, not quote unquote, get the story right as approved by the ADL.
Well, there you go. I guess we can all agree at least the ADL is bad for a long time.
It's my Disney version.
Thank you for, that's my Disney version. Thank you for sticking with us. We really appreciate it. It was a tough show. We try our best. We stacked it. We had a lot of important Israel developments. We also had a lot of important domestic developments. We'll see and continue to track everything. We got counterpoints for everybody tomorrow. If anything breaking happens in the meantime, you can probably expect something. We will remain on it. Our crew and everybody's been working around the clock. Thank you to everybody who has been supporting us, and we will see you all on Thursday.
See you guys Thursday. Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.